Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hosts Melanie Johnson and Jenn Foster are the owners of Elite Online Publishing. They're both Wall Street Journal, USA Today best-selling authors. We're really glad you're here because this podcast was designed for you. Meet industry experts that share their secrets and strategies. Get successful results for your business in money, relationships, health, and your life. Each episode is going to inspire you to take action towards reaching your greatness.
Hey everyone, this is Melanie Johnson. We hope you're having a super great day today. Jenn Foster's in the house. How you doing, Jenn?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for today's interview.
Me too. You know, so many of us struggle with content creation. I know we do. It's like this constant thing, this big elephant that's on your head all the time. What are you supposed to say? Where are you supposed to say it? How are you supposed to say it? How do you get your message and your branding across in the right way? So we have an expert, Andrew Ryder, today. He does just that. I mean, he is narrowly focused on how to create content that's going to work for you, how you can spend less time doing it, making it more effective, getting people more engaged. So we're going to learn all about that today. But first, remember to subscribe to our podcast because we love to have more subscribers, and leave us suggestions if there's topics you want to hear about it, and share it with your friends. And if you're looking to write a book, Jenn and I are experts. We've made over 200 authors #1 bestsellers, and we guarantee it. So reach out to us and we can work with you. Hit that submission button on our website and we'll see if we're a good fit. So moving on to solving the mysteries of content creation, we have Andrew Ryder in the house. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, tell us, Andrew, kind of how you got started into this and how you became the expert at content creation.
Yeah. I always like to start out by saying I don't have a hero's story. I don't have this magical, went on this journey and became this amazing expert. I learned to create content by just writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and making a lot of mistakes. And I never really had a lot of the advice. A lot of the things that I learned that were really helpful for me were not things that I learned from being on social media or from getting help from other various experts. All the things that I learned were from practice and from just writing 1,000 articles, rereading my articles, trying to be more clear in my writing, trying to tell better stories. So, my goal is to communicate some of those lessons so that others can learn vicariously. Maybe they don't have to write 1,000 articles to get these lessons, but they can start improving their content creation more quickly.
Well, let's start off by defining content and content creation and where it goes and what it is.
That's a very important point. So before everyone tunes out because they think they're not a content creator or they think it doesn't apply, the way that I define content is not just your free social media posts. It includes your blog articles. It includes books that you write. It includes your About Me section on your website, your headline, your everything that you do, everything that you put out into the world to communicate with your audience, the thought leadership, the paid programs, the webinars, every story that you tell and every analogy that you use and every word that you write or video you record is either helping your brand, it's advancing that narrative, it's building rapport with your audience, or it's not, right? And so all of those things that I just listed are content. They're all opportunities to create a better relationship with your prospect or with your customer and help them solve their problems.
I love that because a lot of times I think people get confused and they're just thinking that the words content creation means that an influencer on Instagram is creating pictures and modeling in the salt flats in Salt Lake or something, right? They're a content creator, but that's not really what it means. And every entrepreneur has to have things that they're going to be telling their people, whether it's in an email, on their website or whatever. And so that's great that that's what you do and you're an expert at it. That's really great.
So tell us, how do you create more content in less time without running out of ideas?
So it's sort of counterintuitive idea, right? But momentum really begets momentum. So in 2020, I set a goal for myself. I had seen a lot of successful entrepreneurs who just swore by daily content creation. And I would always think, wow, I don't have enough ideas to write about for this week. Like I'm barely getting by here. How am I going to write 365 posts this year? Right. It just felt like such a daunting task. But I knew that this was an area that I needed to improve. And so I set the goal, and I just started by doing January 1st and January 2nd. And honestly, it was really bad. At the beginning, I look back at that content, I'm like, man, I'm glad no one was reading it, because it was terrible. But what I learned is that over the course of doing it, I ended up with 330 posts. I didn't quite get the 365 like I set out a goal to, but I built the habit of daily content creation. And what I learned is that the more you do it, the easier it gets and the more ideas you generate. When I sit down to write, I'll often come up with new connections between ideas. I'll be riffing on an idea and I'll think, oh, that relates to this other idea that I had last week, or it relates to something that happened to me or something that I read about yesterday. And I'll take a quick note on the side. And I'll find that my list of topics to write about keeps growing and growing and growing, even though I'm writing something new every single day. And I think there's two things that are really useful in that regard. One is making sure that you write down your ideas as soon as you have them, and separating that from your actual writing time. A lot of people will sit down and they'll open up a blank document and they'll think, what am I going to write about today? And maybe they look at what they wrote about yesterday, or they look at their content calendar and they say, okay, today is supposed to be tips. So what am I going to write tips about? What's the theme going to be? What tips am I going to give? What infographics going to go along with it? And then 3 hours later, you haven't really made any progress, right? When I sit down to write, I just have a document. I use Notion, which is sort of just one of your various options for note-taking online. And I have a mobile app and I have it on my computer. And so whenever I have an idea, I go into Notion, I just have a page and I write down the idea, just a couple words, whatever it takes to remind myself when I sit down to write. So then the next day I get up, get my coffee, I sit down, I open up that document, and I just have a list of ideas, and I just pick one and start writing. And that just, again, it gets the momentum going, both on a micro scale and on a macro scale. The longer you sit there on the micro time frame on one day, if you're thinking about creating content, the longer you sit there looking at that blinking cursor, the more opportunities you have to talk yourself out of it, or to get sidetracked, or to give up, or whatever, right? But if you just sit down and start writing, maybe the first couple hundred words you write are no good and you delete it, but eventually you're going to get yourself in that flow state. You're going to get going and you're going to write something. You're like, wow, I didn't even know that I could write that. I didn't even know that was in my head, whirling around with all the other thoughts that I was having. And then that gives you another idea. So it's, to sum it up, it's really about just getting started, getting some momentum going, and being consistent.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because I think a lot of times people, they think about starting a blog or starting something and they're like, I don't know what to write about. Or like you said, they're stuck on the blank page for a couple of days and they don't do anything. So setting that goal of once a day really helped you become the writer that you are today, right? Practice makes perfect. So that's great that you did that, but also that you're encouraging others, to do that too. And to really just take the time, and it'll work out, right? It'll all come to you.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the hard thing, right? Is to be consistent when you're just in the beginning. You don't have a lot of people listening to you. You're wondering, what's the point of all of this? And you start thinking too much. Jen, you were drawing the distinction between thinking and doing, right?
Yeah.
And, it's January when we were recording this. Everyone's in that sort of goal setting mindset, right? And in the past, I've always felt like I need to set ambitious goals. I need to do more. I need to accomplish more. I need to be more than I was last year or the year before, and to progress. This year, I'm trying something completely different. I'm trying to do less. I'm trying to accomplish less, and I'm trying to be less. A lot of my problems have been from being too much in my head, thinking too much, worrying about what everyone else is doing, comparing myself to someone else on social media, or just being too caught up in the way things are supposed to be, that I'm not doing the thing. So I'm cutting out most of my habits. I'm cutting out almost everything. And I'm focusing on writing. I'm focusing on, and I guess as a subset of writing is really building a relationship with my audience. I'm focused on having conversations like we're having right now. And I'm focused on, improving my relationship with my wife. And that's really it. I want to remove all of the noise and really just focus on a couple of things that really matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me like of Gary Keller from Keller Williams. It's like the one thing,
Exactly.
what is that one thing? And then if you just focus on the things that are really important instead of trying to be scattered, then it's much more focused. I really love that. So, one of, I think, your superpowers is talking about how to get engagement. I mean, so many of us are putting messaging out there, but no one's engaging with us. You talk about, you can have these calendars and swipe files, but that actually hurts you. How do you gain attention from your audience and get them to relate to you? What are some of you have these like secrets, seems like that really can cut through the noise?
So there's really two things that are going on here. So the problem is that the human brain is bombarded with thousands and thousands of marketing messages every day. There's just way too much information all the time. You're always being compelled to think a certain way, to buy something, or to do something, or to be something. So the way our brains handle that information is by deleting it all. You only notice a very small number of things that actually happen to you. And there's this crazy video. It was a psychology experiment they did where they had two different teams of people passing a basketball around. And the goal was to watch how many times it would be passed to, you've heard of this, right? So you count how many times it was passed to certain players. And what you fail to notice is there's a person wearing a gorilla suit in the middle of the screen, dancing around and waving his arms around because you're so focused on watching the basketball.
Counting. Yeah.
and so people are doing that all the time. They're so focused on whatever their basketball is, whatever they think they're looking for, that they don't notice you. They don't notice the content that you're posting. It's not that your content is bad. It's not that you're a bad writer. It's not that you can't do it. Like all the insecurities that we tell ourselves when we don't get engagement. It's that people literally cannot see it. It does not register in their brain. So that's the problem, right? And the solution that a lot of I guess you would call experts or gurus would suggest is they've tried to design a content calendar or a plan or templates or headline swipes, things that you can use to boost your engagement, right? But the problem with those is everyone else, if you're using it, 100 other people are using it, or 1,000 other people are using it. So now your headlines sound exactly the same. Your topics are the same. You're sacrificing everything that makes your perspective unique and your experience unique, and the way that you solve people's problems or the way that you help people solve their problems. You're losing out on all of that. And so David Ogilvy, who was, an advertising legend in sort of the direct response days, his solution is what he calls a burv singularity. And it's the idea of, if you've ever gone walking out in a field, some plants have these little burrs. They're little balls that have spikes on them and they'll stick to your jeans, right? And so you walk through the field, come out and you have all these little spiky balls, stuck into your pants. The idea of a burv singularity is the same. It's a burr that you want to attach to the mind of your prospect or of the person who's reading your content. You want to inject something unique into your content that changes the way they think about their problem. It's not just another handful of tips, but it's a fresh perspective. It's something that maybe they haven't seen before. It's something that catches their attention or makes them think differently. A lot of what I do is trying to come up with something new or different, right? It's sometimes it's simply for the sake of doing it because no one else is doing it, because that can give you attention quickly, right? But it's not always like that. And those types of tactics end up just getting copied, and then they become mainstream, and then they go away, right? But really, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, it's about telling really high quality and insightful morals. A lot of storytelling experts will say, oh, you have to tell really good stories. You have to, go and live in Tahiti or move to Thailand and have all these incredible experiences so you have amazing stories to tell to your audience. That's not what really resonates with people. It's the moral of the story. It's like when you watch those Disney movies and they would say, the moral of the story is, and then they'd give you a lesson, right? When I think about the best content, the best movies, the best TV shows, the best things that I consume, it's because they have an amazing, just super impactful, insightful moral that, one, either transforms the way I think about whatever problem I'm trying to solve, or it really inspires me to do better. And to give you an example of that, for Christmas, my wife got me a copy of The Greatest Showman. Mm-hmm. It's probably my favorite movie just because I really love the talent and just watching those actors and singers perform. There's just something great about watching people do what they're meant to do and do it so well. It's just really cool to watch. But I also love the entrepreneurial story and the lessons you can learn from it. And when you look at The Greatest Showman in depth, you realize that it's exactly the same story as The Alchemist, which is one of the most popular books of all time, right? So the moral of The Alchemist is there's a boy, he goes on a journey and he realizes that everything he ever wanted, everything that he needed to be was already within him. He already had it. He just didn't realize it. And when, we were just watching The Greatest Showman, and at the very end, the last line of the movie is one of the songs. It's, everything you ever wanted is here right in front of you. And he's sitting in an auditorium and he's watching his daughters perform in the ballet, and he's right there with his wife. And he had that the entire time in the movie, but he goes on this journey and he invests in all these businesses. He makes a ton of money. He goes on a long trips and he spends time away from his family, and he loses everything, right? And he has to start over again. And he realizes that what really mattered to him, his family and spending time with his kids and his wife was really what mattered. That is a good moral. And that's why The Alchemist is one of the most popular books of all time. That's why The Greatest Showman is a super impactful movie for a lot of people who watch it. A lot of people don't realize exactly what is so moving about it, but it's a really high quality moral, and it's not to say that storytelling isn't important, but what really moves people is a moral of the story that inspires them to live differently, to be better, or that, it impacts them to their core.
I love that, because you hear about people talking about storytelling all the time, and that's how you create content, is create stories and be the best storyteller, but they don't talk about the moral or the moral of the story or the moral of it. So I love that you brought that in. Let's talk a little bit about authenticity, because I think this comes into play. I know social media, there's a lot of not authentic people. I don't know how else to say it. Or the facade of perfect people. So talk to us a little bit about that in content creation.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of vulnerability, as is what I would call it. And there's a perfect example of this is in the story of Superman, right? So we all know of Superman as this fantastic hero who can cast laser beams out of his eyes and he can lift anything, and he's virtually indestructible, right? The only thing that makes Superman weak is kryptonite. But when Superman comics were originally developed, kryptonite didn't exist. Superman had no weaknesses. He was completely invulnerable, right? He was the opposite of vulnerable. He could not be stopped, which made him completely unrelatable to every human being watching the show. As humans, we know that no one is perfect. We know that people make mistakes, people have faults. We lose our patience, whatever it might be. And so Superman, as a comic, as a intellectual property, really suffered because no one was interested in reading the comics because they knew he was going to win. There was nothing that could stop him. So the creators of Superman invented kryptonite to save Superman by making him vulnerable, not to kill him off. People think that kryptonite is Superman's greatest weakness, but it's actually his greatest strength. And the same would be true if you're on social media. You see all these people who are Instagram perfect and they have all the right filters and the perfect backdrops and whatever else they're using to give the illusion, or maybe their life is really great. Maybe they have an awesome life, and that's good for them. But what really builds a relationship with someone, and again, that's the whole point of content creation, is to build a relationship with your audience. In order to build a relationship, you want to share your kryptonite. You want to share your vulnerabilities. You want to relate to, right? That's what a relationship is. You're relating to them, and you can't relate to your customer unless your customer is a bunch of people who have perfect lives. But if they have perfect lives, they're probably not going to be interested in buying whatever it is that you sell. So let's assume that your customers don't have perfect lives. They're human beings and they make mistakes and they have problems. And you can really help them by showing vulnerability, by showing that you had all of those same problems too, and you learned to conquer them. You overcame them by using the solutions that you sell, by learning the lessons that you learned, by watching the content that you watched and extracting the morals out of those stories, the lessons that you learned on your journey. It also gives them more motivation, knowing that someone else has done it. Maybe I can do it too. So that's, vulnerability is your greatest asset.
Yes.
That really makes sense. Part of the storytelling, one of your philosophies is that you can easily turn any random story into content. And we were having this conversation just the other day. It's like, hey, we should be saying, hey, we just did this thing today, and this is what we got out of it. Like these little things
exactly.
I think are not important, that we're having conversations internally about. Other people are interested and they're like, oh, wow, they screwed this up today, but look they overcame it by doing blah, blah, blah. How do you turn everyday stories into meaningful content?
It's a lot of the things we've been talking about. I think as you mentioned, it's a lot of people aren't looking closely enough. They're living their life, but they're not thinking, how can I turn this into content about everything that happens? And this, I will say, this is not necessarily a good thing, but I'm looking for that all the time. So when I'm watching Netflix on the weekend, I am grabbing my phone every couple of minutes to write down an idea for something that I saw in the show that is applicable to, what it is that I do. And that can be kind of annoying sometimes. It's impossible to turn it off, but the upside is you get a lot of ideas, and not every idea is great. And I don't see them all through to completion, but a lot of people miss out on a lot of good ideas because they're just not looking for them. One of the things that I recommend, at least when you're starting out, to sort of train yourself to do this, is to set some time aside. It could be 10 minutes a day, sort of towards the end of your day, and think about your day and think about, okay, I got up, I got my coffee. Was there anything that happened this morning that I could talk about, that relates to whatever it is that I teach? And again, you're looking for morals of the story, not necessarily the story itself. That is really when we talk about how to turn any story into something that's useful for your audience, it's how you spin the moral into something that's valuable for them. So you could be telling a story about your diet, right? Or whatever it might be. How do you take that story about your diet and turn it into a lesson about content creation, or about book publishing, or about exercise, or about whatever it is that you do? If you're looking for ways to draw a moral, right? So the moral of the story is a lesson that's sort of parallel to the story, but it's not the literal story. And by making that distinction, it gives you a lot more freedom to turn something as random as, to give an example, it snowed a bunch here over the last couple of weeks. I live in Seattle, and so we don't usually get a lot of snow, usually once a year. And so our dog loves to go out and play in the snow, and we do that, every time it snows. And so the snow plows had already come by and they'd piled up the snow on the side of the road. And so we thought it'd be fun. Oh, Bella, let's get you to climb this giant snow hill, right? But she doesn't want to climb the hill. She's like, okay, if you want me to go over there, I'm going to go around the hill because it's way easier. And so I turned that into a lesson about how going, a lot of people think that the shortest distance between two places is a straight line, but it's not always a straight line because there's obstacles or there's things in the way. The other approach to this, I don't know if you have dogs or if you've seen this, but if you take a dog to the ocean and you throw the ball out say you throw it at a diagonal out into the ocean. So the dog has basically three options. It can go straight from point A to point B to get the ball, right? And that involves basically swimming the entire distance. The swimming is a lot slower than running. So a smarter dog, right, might run all the way down the beach and then to minimize the swim distance and then swim straight out and straight back. But that's also not the fastest way to do it. What the dog, and all dogs know how to do this. I don't know why. Humans have this problem. Dogs do not have this problem. The dog will run about 75% of the way down the beach and then cut at a sharp angle and swim out at a shorter angle than if it had gone straight, but a longer angle than if it run all the way down. And it knows pretty well how to optimize the shortest distance. But humans don't do that, right? Humans are always focused on breaking through obstacles and conquering mountains. And we get all of these, maybe we want to conquer a mountain because it makes us look cool, or because we think it's something that we need to do in order to be successful. But oftentimes you don't. Oftentimes you'd be better off just going around. So it's something as simple as that, right? That, we're talking about how do you turn everyday random things into lessons. Not every lesson that you teach is going to resonate with everyone. But if you do it every day and you hit different angles and you try different things, you're going to find something that resonates with everyone.
I love that. That's a great example too. Well, tell us, Andrew, where people can go to find more information about you and to your website. Yeah.
So everything that I do is on my website, andrewbryder.com. And if you go over there and subscribe to my daily email newsletter, like we've talked about, I write a lot and I like to share a lot. So I write an email newsletter every day. And in it, I share tips on how to create better content, how to do a lot of the things that we've been talking about. And if anything, it's a case study in how to extract great morals from average stories. And I also have a free training that you get if you subscribe that will show you some of these strategies that you can start with right away to start creating better content.
I love all of that. Everything that you're talking about and teaching all applies to writing a book. You know, your
Absolutely.
book all is about stories. You're teaching and telling your life experiences, but it's all about the story that goes with it, whether it's your personal story or it's a story of somebody else that you heard of, that you can tie it back into the lesson that you're teaching in your book. So definitely sign up for that and get those tips, and it'll help you start creating content to write a book or write a course or whatever your dream is to write. So thanks for joining us, Andrew. We really enjoyed having you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
So remember to subscribe again to our podcast and share it with other people. And if you're looking to write a book and you get your content and your stories and your morals and take all those moral stories that you have and put them together in a book, we would love to work with you. Just reach out to us at our website and hit that submission button there and fill out the paperwork, and we'll see if we're a good fit. So we're looking forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.
Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.